It began with a boy and a dime. On a quiet Saturday morning in 1928 Los Angeles, a single mother named Christine Collins handed her 9-year-old son some change and watched him walk down the street to see a movie. He would never come back. What followed was a nightmare that spiraled beyond comprehension, a dark odyssey that would entangle corrupt police, a grieving mother's unbreakable will, and a string of horrors buried beneath a chicken ranch in the California desert. At the center of it all was Christine, a woman who simply wanted her son back, and instead found herself in a war against a system determined to crush her. This is the story of the boy who wasn't Walter. Christine Ida Collins was a determined woman in an era that expected submission. A supervisor at a telephone company, she was known for her no-nonsense demeanor, especially when dealing with men in authority. Her personal life, however, was a constant challenge. Her ex-husband was an ex-convict, serving time in Folsom State Prison, leaving Christine to raise their son, Walter, entirely on her own in their modest Lincoln Heights home. Despite the stigma of being a divorced single mother, she was resolved to give her son a normal, happy childhood. But the Los Angeles of the Roaring Twenties was a city of dualities. While the film industry boomed, so did organized crime. The Los Angeles Police Department, under the command of Chief James "Two Gun" Davis, had earned a notorious reputation for brutality and scandal. His infamous gun squad operated with orders to shoot first and ask questions later. By 1928, the LAPD was a powder keg of corruption and incompetence, and Christine Collins's quiet resolve was about to light the fuse. 9-year-old Walter Collins was the center of his mother's world. A bright, good-natured boy, he was known to be quiet, polite, a happy lad of 10 summers, as one newspaper would later describe him. On Saturday, March 10, 1928, Christine gave Walter that fateful dime. It was a special weekend treat. A neighbor later reported seeing him around 5 p.m., not far from home. But when night fell and Walter hadn't returned, a knot of anxiety tightened in Christine's chest. After a frantic search, she reported her son missing. The initial LAPD response was routine. They assumed he'd run off. But Christine knew something was terribly wrong. Walter had vanished. The case quickly gained media attention. Police squads and volunteers scoured Northeast LA, even dragging the lake in Lincoln Park. Tips poured in, a boy wrapped in newspaper in the back of a car, a distressed child seen as far as San Francisco. Walter's father, from his prison cell, theorized it was revenge from his criminal past. But every lead turned into a dead end. For months, Christine lived every parent's worst nightmare, waiting by the phone for a call that never came. Meanwhile, public pressure on the corrupt LAPD mounted. They were desperate for a victory, for some positive publicity. And that desperation would lead them to a shocking, unforgivable blunder. In August 1928, nearly 5 months after Walter's disappearance, a stunning development offered a glimmer of hope. A runaway boy in DeKalb, Illinois, claimed to be Walter Collins. Eager for a breakthrough, the LAPD exchanged letters and photos. On paper, the resemblance was there. Christine, clinging to any possibility, paid for the boy's train ticket to California. The LAPD, seeing its chance for a public relations victory, staged a highly publicized reunion at the train station. But as the boy stepped onto the platform, Christine's heart sank. Under the blinding glare of reporters' flashbulbs, she whispered in dismay, "I do not think that is my son. He looked similar, but a mother knows her child. This boy was an impostor." Captain J.J. Jones, the officer in charge, was not about to have his triumph spoiled. He dismissed her concerns, urging her to, in his own chilling words, try the boy out for a couple of weeks. Pressured by the police and the cameras, a stunned Christine reluctantly brought the boy home. For 3 agonizing weeks, she lived with the stranger, gathering evidence to prove what she already knew in her heart. She obtained Walter's dental records and had friends and teachers examine the boy. The proof was overwhelming. Her Walter had fillings, this boy had none. Armed with hard evidence, Christine marched back to the police station and confronted Captain Jones. His response was not one of concern, but of pure fury. "What are you trying to do, make fools out of us all?" he asked her mockingly. He accused her of being a cruel mother trying to abandon her child. When she persisted, Jones declared her mentally unstable. "You're insane," he told her, "and you're under arrest." He invoked a Code 12, a procedure used to commit anyone deemed an inconvenience to the authorities. Christine Collins was carted away against her will to the psychiatric ward at Los Angeles County General Hospital, locked away for daring to tell the truth. As Christine suffered in the asylum, the impostor's story began to crumble. Under renewed questioning, the boy finally broke down. His real name was Arthur J. Hutchins Jr., a 12-year-old drifter from Iowa. He had concocted the entire story to get a free trip to Hollywood to meet his favorite movie star. When the confession reached hospital officials, Christine was immediately released. Her sanity was vindicated, but she was still a mother without her son. The city erupted in outrage. Public sympathy swung decisively to her side. While Christine filed a lawsuit against the LAPD for false imprisonment, a horrifying parallel story was unfolding on a dusty chicken ranch in Riverside County. Unbeknownst to the public, Walter Collins had likely fallen victim to Gordon Stewart Northcutt, a 21-year-old whose name would soon be etched in infamy. On his remote farm in Wineville, Northcutt, sometimes aided by his mother Sarah and his teenage nephew Sanford Clark, had begun a spree of abducting and murdering young boys. His method was monstrous. He would lure children to his ranch and hold them captive in chicken coops, repurposed into chambers of horror. After subjecting them to unspeakable acts, he would end their lives with an axe, burying their remains in shallow graves and covering them with quicklime to hasten decomposition. The Northcutt family's reign of terror was exposed in September 1928, when Sanford Clark's sister traveled from Canada and found her brother a prisoner on the ranch. Her tip finally led law enforcement to the isolated property. There, a shaken Sanford poured out a horrifying confession, detailing his uncle's crimes. Crucially, he identified Nelson and Louis Winslow, two missing brothers, and Walter Collins, as three of the boys Northcutt had murdered. Suddenly, the disconnected cases converged into one horrific tapestry. As a manhunt for Northcutt began, investigators started the gruesome task of searching the ranch. They found human bone fragments, blood-soaked mattresses, and personal items belonging to the Winslow brothers. They also found trace evidence that was tentatively linked to Walter Collins. Faced with the undeniable truth, the city reeled. Gordon and Sarah Northcutt were apprehended in Canada and extradited. In a twisted attempt to save her son from the death penalty, Sarah Northcutt confessed to murdering Walter Collins herself. She was sentenced to life in prison. Gordon Northcutt stood trial for the murders of the Winslow brothers and another unidentified boy. He turned the trial into a circus of arrogance, representing himself and spewing contradictions. But testimony from his own father and his nephew sealed his fate. He was found guilty and sentenced to death by hanging. Christine watched the trial intently, holding on to a sliver of hope for a definitive answer. But Northcutt never gave one. Hours before his execution in 1930, she visited him at San Quentin prison one last time. He had promised to tell her the truth. But as she stood outside his cell, he refused to speak, retracting his promise with a final, cruel silence. Northcutt went to the gallows, and Christine walked away with no closure. The case forced change. California passed the Christine Collins Law, prohibiting police from committing someone to a psychiatric facility without a warrant. The scandal led to a shakeup in the LAPD. And the town of Wineville, forever stained by the crimes, changed its name to Mira Loma. But Christine Collins never gave up. For 36 years, she continued to search for her son. The discovery in 1935 of another boy who claimed to have escaped the ranch alive fueled her belief that Walter might have survived. She never remarried, dedicating her life to that faint possibility. Christine Collins died in 1964, never receiving proof of Walter's fate. Her story is a heartbreaking testament to a mother's unending love, a fight for justice against a corrupt system, and the search for a boy who never came home from the movies. The case of Christine Collins forces us to confront uncomfortable truths about power, corruption, and the refusal to believe a victim. Her resilience changed laws and exposed a deep rot within a system meant to protect. If her story of courage moved you, please leave a like to help her legacy reach a wider audience. Now, I want to hear from you. Comment below, what do you find more disturbing, the crimes of Gordon Northcutt, or the institutional gaslighting Christine endured from the police? Let's discuss this profound and important piece of history. And don't forget to subscribe for more deep dives into the cases that shape our world.